This is episode 5 of The Uncomfortable Couch. Today's topic is infidelity. In this episode, we discuss how the Ashley Madison hacks of 2015 and other mobile apps have shed light on just how typical cheating really is. What's the draw to be unfaithful? Lastly, do you have to be unhappy to cheat? Let's go now to our conversation. Today in our conversation, we are discussing infidelity, and one reason why I am interested in talking about infidelity now is because now more than ever, it's relevant in light of what happened last year, for example, with the Ashley Madison hacks. For those of you who don't know, Ashley Madison was a website that basically allowed married people to have illicit affairs on the side without being caught. However, call it karma, call it what you will, the website was hacked and hundreds of thousands of people had their information released. Basically, it turns out that cheating and being unfaithful is much more common than people had initially anticipated. So Ben, starting out, I was hoping you could talk to us about what makes cheating so attractive. Because in my mind, the way I see it, if you gave me a pistol and it had 6 chambers and you said, let's play Russian roulette, but there's only one bullet in the chamber, I probably would not play that game no matter the reward. However, with cheating, it seems like this is an incredibly risky thing that if you get caught cheating, it destroys your relationships, your reputation, et cetera, and yet people go back to it over and over and over again, and so much so to where you have applications like Tinder and Grindr and whatever that are built around people having these anonymous hookups, and there's this adventure and excitement element to it. So let's talk a little bit about that. What, in your opinion, makes cheating so attractive? What's the draw to it?
Well, I like your Russian roulette metaphor. I think that you kind of hit it on the head with that, and that infidelity in general is about excitement. It's about rush. It's about the reasons that people play Russian roulette, frankly, or used to. I don't know if anyone still does that, but there's a lot of reasons to do that. There's a lot of reasons why a relationship can become vulnerable to that. In my opinion, infidelity is more of an issue of impulse and compulsion. It's sort of like an urge that I feel drawn to, and I feel an impulse that pushes me towards it, and I have a hard time resisting it. And so when you are in a relationship where you're beginning to feel that, or if you have that compulsion, it probably indicates something about the relationship in general. The vulnerability of that relationship. And some people are more vulnerable to that compulsion and that impulse than others in the first place. And that their relationship, it might not be so much about their relationship as it's about a reality for them, an internal reality that they struggle with that makes that kind of a thrill or seeking that kind of excitement particularly compulsive, where that is harder to resist. But it does happen. It happens pretty frequently. And I think that to another side of it, too, to consider is that infidelity and how common it is says something about, frankly, the difficulty of maintaining a healthy, intimate relationship in the first place. And that time and a relationship over time can be difficult to continually rise up to meet the developing needs as people age, as people continue to develop themselves personally, for the relationship to continue to keep up and to continue to sustain what both partners need is challenging. It's hard. You kind of got to work at it. You have to, again, it's like other things that we've talked about. You have to communicate well. You have to be able to stay caught up with each other so that the relationship doesn't begin to fall short and leave one or both partners lacking and feeling like they're vulnerable to a compulsion towards shoring up the gaps.
Okay. Now, from what you've seen, is it more likely that cheating occurs when one person is unhappy in the relationship? Because in my mind, when I picture someone in a relationship cheating, I picture one person being, for whatever reason, dissatisfied, so they go to, look for love in the wrong place or whatever. But I've also heard that sometimes they're perfectly satisfied couples, people who are in love and who really care about the other person and they think their relationship is going well, but yet one of them is cheating, possibly even habitually. So my question does cheating take place with couples that are unsatisfied, or can it be with couples that are happy with themselves as well?
Yeah, definitely it can be both. It's really not a simple issue. Cheating in general is well, it can be from a number of different sources. I mean, you can have one partner who's addicted to sex, and not just any sex, but rush, thrill sex. And when they're not getting, it's very difficult to maintain that level of dopamine boost and adrenaline and excitement in a relationship that you've been in for a long time. So if one person just is really hooked on the rush of illicit sex, when you get into a monogamous relationship, they can struggle to find that, and so they might go looking elsewhere. I think sometimes people just catch feels for other people. They're in a relationship and they might feel like they're really happy in it and that they feel a sense of intimacy with their partner, but they meet somebody at work and innocent flirtations and innocent time spent together can develop something, and before you know it, this person means something more to them than they ever intended them to. And even in that, though, if you were able to explore the relationship in depth, you might find that this other relationship that seems innocent enough or seems to have developed innocently is meeting a need that the seemingly so-called happy couple might not have identified, and there might have been a vulnerability they might not have realized. Yeah, it can come from a lot of different sources.
So I was hoping that we could have a raw behind the scenes look at just what it does to a relationship, because even, I'm going through the series Homeland right now, and the two characters, Brody and Carrie, and this is a spoiler alert, but Brody and Carrie, they have, the whole story kind of is built around them having an affair because Brody is married and Carrie knows he's married. But I feel like we're not getting the whole side of this, the whole realistic picture of the story. And I know that because I have seen people in my own life whose marriages have been wrecked, and I've seen some of the emotional damage that comes from that. But from your perspective, what's a raw behind the scenes look at just what effects cheating has on a relationship?
It's pretty brutal. In a lot of ways, you could call it one of the most painful things that a human being can experience. Obviously, if we just mad scientists in a lab thought of the worst ever, we could think of things that are worse. But at its core, by its nature, it is incredibly damaging because it involves attachment. And attachment, the beauty of attachment is that it matters. It matters. It's in a lot of ways, it's the only thing that matters. And the way that attachment matters, where attachment matters to us, is really deep inside of us. It goes very core. It's close to our identity. It's close to our sense of self. It's close to the meaning of life. It gives us our purpose. It gives us our sense of well-being in many cases. It goes deep and on purpose, and that's a good thing. And when that goes well, an attachment relationship can change our life for the better, unlike much of anything else in the world. So when you take that relationship and that access that relationship provides into the core of a human being and you turn it poisonous, it's poison and its brokenness and its pain that goes straight to our very core. Very quickly, people who have been cheated on will very quickly begin to question their sense of self. They'll question their identity, their value, their worth. And I think logically we could look at that and say, yeah, that makes sense. Someone cheats on you and you start asking, am I not good enough? But it goes beyond just that simple logical connection of, yes, this has affected how I view myself. It affects us at our core where that stuff lives. And that is brutal. One way I've heard it described is cheating creates an attachment threat. So think about this. If the attachment relationship goes to my very core, and it's not only part of what makes my life worth living, but it's a part of what makes me who I am, think about the pain of having the figure who I have attached with, who I have this intimate relationship with, do that for and with someone else while still being with me. the threat of that loss, essentially it invites and introduces comparison into your core, into your heart. She is with me, but she chose to cheat on me with him. That level of him and his influence and the power of him is now introduced into my heart as this sort of like rival threat that when you experience it, it feels like your skin's on fire. It feels like your insides are being ripped out through your pores. It's just brutal. It's so devastating. It's one of the most devastating things that I've ever sat in a room with. So devastating, in fact, that it's one of the most common places that I see strong avoidance and overregulation of the feelings. Especially people who try to make it work, who try to stay together. You'll see, especially the person who's cheated on will often have a brutal. It's so difficult for that partner to face it, to face the weight of it, and so they'll often run from it. They can't. They to feel the whole weight of the pain of it, and to stay with the person who has caused that pain is very difficult to do. So most people either split, they pretend like it didn't happen. They take the apology at face value and just sort of try to move on and pretend like it didn't happen and sort of gloss over the threat, gloss over the wound, gloss over the pain of it and just try to move forward. Or they do the really hard work of repairing that breach of trust, that broken bond, and moving forward authentically together. It's very difficult to do. It can be done, but it takes a lot of work on both partners, both the person who cheated and the person who's cheated on. They both have to work really hard to make it through something like that, because it's so devastating.
Now, I've read in some of my textbooks when I was studying psychology that people have different theories about who we're attracted to and who we become attached to. I naturally have a predisposition towards this certain type of woman because of the way my relationship with my mom is, or whatever. Is there a connection between being cheated on and then maybe in your next relationship possibly having a predisposition towards cheating, or having a predisposition towards being attracted to someone who might cheat on me again, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I've seen people respond all kinds of ways to cheating. Some people move into their next relationship and they say, I know how much that hurts and I know how devastating that is. I will never cheat. Other people, I think it's as simple as the sanctity of a relationship is sort of, they've been burned by that and they don't necessarily feel it in the same way, feel the same value for it, same sacredness for the relationship and the bond there. And frankly, some people have been so burned by being cheated on, especially if the person they were cheated on was intimately connected and they really had allowed that person into their heart. It can just be difficult for them to allow their next partner back into their heart, or into their heart in general, to allow themselves to be vulnerable, to allow them to integrate lives and to find that level of intimacy. And people who lack that are vulnerable to... let's say you've been cheated on and you form a new relationship with someone, and when you were cheated, your heart was just absolutely broken and ripped apart, as it can be. And the next person you're having a difficult time connecting with and bonding with because you've been so burned. And then you meet someone at work who seems to bypass your fears. You're attracted to this person and you're quote unquote into them in a way that you're not necessarily with your partner. It's difficult to resist that. Cheating is so disruptive that we shouldn't be really surprised at any number of ways that it can mess with a person's ability to remain faithful to their other partners or to bond with their partners. There's no telling exactly how any individual person will respond because there's so many ways that they can.
And Ben, what counseling would you offer someone who has been cheated on but is still invested in making the relationship work?
Well, that's the first question. Are you invested? Do you want to make it work? And the first thing that I tell people is, if so, prepare yourself, because it's going to be really hard. it is such a battle. It is such a profound thing you're asking of someone who's been cheated on to trust again, to allow someone who's hurt them so much to have renewed access to their heart. It's brutal, and yet it can happen. It can be done. To me, so much of what that hinges on whether or not this can be successful is whether or not the person who cheated can feel the weight of it, can feel what they've done, can feel the pain in the other. A person who's cheated, who rationalizes and wants to say, well, look, this is how this is why, and kind of like blames, maybe says it's your fault, and ultimately will say, yeah, I'm sorry it happened and it won't happen again, but isn't really moved by it, is going to have a nearly impossible time reintegrating into the life of their partner. It's so difficult. The ability to do it is driven by emotion. The emotions are what lead you back together. The guilt, the shame, the pain, the empathy that floods the cheater actually moves them towards the cheated and towards the cheated on partner's pain, and basically owns it, joins them with it, and gives the cheated on partner a sense of safety in that I know and I have felt from you that you get what this did and that you get it with me, because that helps me to sense that if you would be given another opportunity to do this, the pain that's in me that I now see is also in you because of your empathy and your sympathy and your connection with me. That pain will serve as a guardian against you ever doing this again. There's no way you could ever do this to me because of how much it hurt me, and I know that you feel that. My pain has become your pain. We as a couple have experienced this pain together. The pain that I caused you, I now own with you, and I've joined you in that, so that essentially the idea that I would ever cheat on you sounds like I would have to face the brokenness of this again, and I don't want to do that. And that can be powerful enough to trust. Logic, reasons why I wouldn't do this, reasons why I did it, and then why I wouldn't do it again, those are imminently fakeable. You can just completely BS somebody all day long about why you wouldn't do this. You could be BSing yourself of why I did this and why I wouldn't do it again. That comes from a part of your brain that can be convinced of anything in very short order. The emotion, the feeling, the depth of connecting with the depth of the pain and actually feeling it, you can't fake that. You can fake the experience, you can pretend like you're feeling it. But typically people will have a pretty good radar for that. They'll have a sense of like, you're just trying to get back with me and you don't actually feel this. But when you can actually connect over the feeling and you can, the feeling resonates with both of you, typically that's an experience. That's an experiential. That's an experience that moves, and the movement of that can be back together. So I would talk to a couple about. Well, first you talk to maybe even individuals about are they interested in that? Are they interested in the hard work of that? Does the cheater care enough for his partner or her partner to join in the pain of this? To own that together and to say, I feel it the way that you feel it now. I understand you and I love you, and I will let you tell me the weight of this. Walk me through into that inner brokenness. Walk me into it, and I will sit there with you. Is the cheater willing to do that? Is the cheated on willing to do that as well? Willing to accept that? Willing to welcome this person in, even cautiously, into the vulnerable place of, look, this is what you did to me. This is how much you hurt me. So both partners have to be willing to work really hard at that, to repair that. If, in my office, most people don't need much help for avoidance. If they're looking like, give us some tools and strategies to manage this so that it doesn't happen again, often is a way of masking, tell us why we should just move on and feel better, and not be scared of this happening again, and give us some tricks and help us to avoid. And you don't need much help for that. If you want to go that route of just pretending like it didn't happen, you can go that route. It's a pretty vulnerable place, and it's vulnerable for it happening again. Whatever the conditions were, if they don't go away, then and if you don't communicate and you're not open about where this came from and how you really felt about it, it could happen again. And in some cases, it would probably be better just to split at that point than to do that. You kind of, to me, your choices are, if this relationship is not worth it, or if you don't believe that your partner will go through the hard work of repair, you either split, then you split, or if you do believe that the partner is willing and you are willing and it's worth it, then you have to put in work. But you can't do that. To me, I look at it, I don't think does much good in doing the middle ground where we just kind of, okay, you said you were sorry, we'll pretend like it didn't happen and move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That concludes this episode of The Uncomfortable Couch. Join us next time when Ben and I discuss boundaries and how they are a direct reflection of something deeper. I'm your host, Josh Munyon, thanking you for joining us here on The Uncomfortable Couch. We'll see you next time.